After the Oblivion Crisis, Tamriel was left in chaos. The Empire was left without an emperor, a lot of damage was done to the land by the forces of Oblivion, and the Elder Council, led by High Chancellor Octato, tried to maintain order. 5 years after the Oblivion Crisis, the Red Mountain of Ardenfell erupted, leaving the province of Morrowind nearly destroyed and in chaos. Many refugees were fleeing to Skyrim and Solstheim. This year was called the Red Year. In the 5 years after the events of the Red Year, Black Marsh secedes from the Empire after the eruption of the Red Mountain. And a few months later, Elsewhere follows their example, by leaving the Empire as well. By this year, Elsewhere is an independent state called the Elsewhere Confederacy, existing out of the two kingdoms, Anaquina and Palatine. Also in these years, the Thalmor are becoming increasingly popular, and they send agents to kill High Chancellor Octato, leaving the Empire leaderless for the coming 7 years. In those 7 years there was a lot of infighting in the Elder Council over who would be the next ruler of the Empire. And during this time, the High King of Skyrim officially gives the island of Solstheim to the Dunmer refugees that had fled from Morrowind after the events of the Red Year. 1 year later, the Colovian warlord Titus Mede captures the Imperial City and is crowned emperor. After some time, the Thalmor seize the control of the Somerset Isle and send agents to Argonia, setting the Ansehil, I never know how to pronounce that, government to go on and invade Morrowind. In the year 29, the Thalmor sent agents to Valenwood and together with Bosmer sympathizers overthrow the Imperial-backed government in Valenwood, then proclaiming a union between Valenwood and Eleanor, the new name of the Somerset Isles, that will be called the Altmerry Dominion. For the coming 70 years, the Thalmor kept quiet, in the meantime distancing themselves even more from the Empire. But then, in the year 98, the two moons of Nirn, Messer and Secunda suddenly disappeared. 2 years of pitch-black nights, called the Void Nights, had passed when the moons suddenly returned. The Thalmor quickly took credit for the returns of the moons. If they were really responsible remains debated, but most people believe that the Thalmor just took credit for the reappearance, so they would have more support from the Khajiit. If that was the main goal or not, doesn't matter. It definitely worked. The Elsewhere Confederacy was diminished, and the Thalmor took the two kingdoms in the Altmerry Dominion as their client states. The empire as we see it here is the empire that Titus Mede II inherited once he had ascended to the throne, severely weakened and just a mere shadow of its former glory, with only Hammerfell, High Rock, Skyrim and Cyrodiil under imperial rule. 3 years after Titus Mede II became emperor, a Thalmor ambassador arrives at the imperial city with a gift for the emperor and an ultimatum. Titus rejected the ultimatum, which was a long list of demands including the outlaw of the worship of Talos, disbandment of the Blades, huge tributes paid to the Altmerry Dominion, and ceding half of Hammerfell to the Dominion. Titus knew the Empire was in no condition to fight, but he rejected the ultimatum. The Thalmor ambassador then gave the Emperor his gift, which turned out to be all the heads of the Blades agents posted in Eleanor, Valenwood, and elsewhere. This was the moment when the Great War began. The Dominion quickly began invading the Empire, beginning with invading Hammerfell and Cyrodiil simultaneously. They started the attack on southern Cyrodiil by letting their armies under Lord Nerifin march out of secret camps in northern Elsewhere. There they quickly overthrew the city of Leowin, and while Bravil defended itself, it was cut off and besieged. While Lord Nerifin and his armies were invading more of southern Cyrodiil, Lady Aranelia, yes, pronounced correctly, and her armies invaded Hammerfell by quickly moving through the space between Anvil and Kvatch. By doing this, Anvil got cut off of the rest of the Empire. Another part of Lady Aranelia's army invaded the southern coast of Hammerfell by boats. When Lord Nerifin kept marching further into Cyrodiil and Bravil had fallen, the Altmerry government saw his success. The capture of the Imperial City became their #1 objective. Meanwhile, the Imperials struggled to keep the east bank of the Niben River, while there were naval battles going on all over Lake Rumeray and along the river Niben. but Lord Narvin kept marching until his troops had reached the Imperial City itself. In the meantime in Hammerfell, the armies of Lady Arenelia made great progress and now held the entire south coast of Hammerfell, and thus forced the Imperial armies to cross the Alakir Desert in the infamous March of the Thirst. By the year 173, the armies of Lord Narvin succeeded in crossing the Neben River and were closing in even further on the Imperial City. In Hammerfell, Lady Arenelia's armies followed the Imperial forces across the Alakir Desert to Skaven. At Skaven, a bloody battle occurred between the armies of the Imperial General Decanius and Arenelia's Altmeri forces. It was a close victory for Lady Arenelia, but the Altmeri army was too weakened to keep up the fight. So the war in Hammerfell was for the time being brought to a standstill. By the year 174, the Altmeri government decided to commit all available resources to Cyrodiil, hoping for a quick and decisive victory. With help of new forces, Lord Narvin surrounded the Imperial City, attacking it from all directions. Then the Emperor decided to fight his way out of the city instead of facing bitter defeat in the city. When he and his armies had broken out, he linked up with fresh reinforcements from Skyrim. A few hours later, the soldiers remaining in the city fell, and the Altmeri forces sacked the city, burned the Imperial Palace, and looted the White Gold Tower. Meanwhile in Hammerfell, General Decianus was driving the Altmeri forces out of Skaven when he was ordered to join the main army in Cyrodiil. He did not want to abandon the fight in Hammerfell, so instead he allowed a lot of veterans to be discharged from the Imperial Legion and keep fighting in Hammerfell. At the end of the year 174, it seemed as if the Empire was standing on its last legs. The Thalmor tried to negotiate with Titus, and Titus played along by pretending he was about to surrender. But instead he was gathering his reinforcements in the Colovian Highlands so he could retake the Imperial City. In the beginning of the year 175, Titus brought his forces in position. The forces from Hammerfell stationed themselves in the Colovian Highlands. The Nord armies from Skyrim positioned themselves near Chernanal, and the main army mustered near Bruma. Then, on the 30th of the Rain's Hand, the Battle of the Red Ring began, as the three armies attacked the city from all sides. The Nord armies, under General Joanna, retook the east bank of the Neben, while the armies under General Decanius retook the west bank of Lake Rumoray. The main army, commanded by the Emperor himself, retook the north and west banks of Lake Rumoray. Meanwhile, the forces left in Hammerfell drove the Altmeri armies back through the Alakir Desert. By day 5 of the Red Ring, the Imperial forces had surrounded the Imperial City. Titus retook the city and captured Lord Narvin, and ultimately drove the Altmeri forces out of Cyrodiil. At this point, the main army of the Thalmor was destroyed, but the Empire was also on the verge of destruction. It was this moment when the Emperor decided to sign the White Gold Concordat, the same ultimatum set 4 years ago. The Emperor decided to live and maybe fight another day, instead of being destroyed after some more weeks of fighting. Hammerfell, although, did not agree to the terms of the White Gold Concordat and kept fighting the armies of Lady Arenelia. After 5 years of fighting, Hammerfell had brought the Altmeri forces to a standstill, and the Treaty of Stros-M'Kai was signed between Hammerfell and the Dominion, this meaning the Dominion would leave Hammerfell. Well guys, this was it, a quick recap of the Great War. If you liked it, crush that like button the way you would crush an Altmer's face. And before I forget it, next video we'll be covering Akavir, so don't forget to check in next week, and see you later.